Growing up in a farming community, it was always an annual tradition to head out into the orchards every summer for some pick-your-own fruit. But thanks to this year's early spring snafu in the temperature department, northeastern fruit farmers will be suffering this summer. The severity of fruit damage largely depends on the budding stages of the various fruits. Not all bud development happens at the same time. To help shine some light on the troubled trees, I turned to Dr. Rob Crassweller, a deciduous fruit tree expert in the Penn State Department of Plant Science.
Tree fruit bloom is that the apricots are first, and then usually you go into something like cherries, followed by peaches, followed by apples and pears. And so there's a definite progression as you go through each season. So typically, we rarely get apricots in Pennsylvania because they bloom so early. But apples and pears and cherries and peaches, usually we're pretty good.
Unfortunately, usually does not mean always, and this year significant losses to other fruits are already being seen. Harner Farm in State College has already seen a total loss to their plum crop, which were in full bloom during the first week of April. Some damage is also expected among peaches, as some varieties were far enough along in development to be susceptible to the cold snap.
Typically what we do is we start developing what we call half-inch green or tight cluster, or there's all different names for these different stages. It's just a matter of how the flowers and the growth are emerging. And so the first stage is green tip, and then we go to half-inch green, then we go to tight cluster, and that's where the flower buds, you can see them, but they're all very tightly held. And then we go to open cluster where the flower buds open, and then we go to pink where you start to see pink on the flowers, and then you go to king bloom, and then you go to full bloom. So there's a whole series of stages, and for each fruit crop there's that stage, there's different stages. Depending on the stage, and flowers, as I said, they develop from apricots and plums and so on and so forth. If you get that temperature when peaches are in full bloom and you get minus 28, you could lose all your peaches, but the apples, because they're further behind, they're all right, because they can withstand a cold temperature. They have a different stage that they can withstand at 28 degrees Fahrenheit. But peaches, generally speaking, during bloom, if you have on any crop, if you have 28 degrees or colder, usually you're going to have considerable damage.
Here's a look at the number of days where temperatures have dropped to or below the freezing mark at 7 Pennsylvania reporting sites so far this month through today. Notice that in most locations, nearly half of the mornings so far this month have been below freezing. But with average lows still ranging from 32 to 42 degrees across Pennsylvania, freezes this time of year are far from unusual. But here is the more troubling statistic. At those same 7 reporting sites, the number of days that have been below 28 degrees so far this month, as many as 7 times in some of the colder valleys of north central and central Pennsylvania, and even up to 4 times in the valleys of east central Pennsylvania, including Allentown. The most recent April where nights got this cold so frequently was 2007. But summer fruit was not put in jeopardy nearly as much that year. Why? The answer lies in March. Here is a look at average max temperatures recorded during March 2007 across Pennsylvania. Some cities near Lake Erie had average maxes not far from the freezing mark. The warmest parts of the state averaged highs of 51 to 54 degrees, and the statewide average temperature departure was just 1 degree above normal. Now here is this March. The differences are staggering. The coldest parts of the state averaged highs near 42 degrees, while the warmest parts of the south were close to 60 for a mean. The statewide average departure was 7.3 degrees above normal, and it was the 4th warmest March on record statewide in Pennsylvania. It wasn't all that long ago that we had a similar scare for summer fruit. Spring of 2012 was not good for the fruit farmers.
Like Yogi Berra says, deja vu all over again. Because go back to 2012, we had the exact same thing, where we had April weather in March and March weather in April. And we were completely wiped out in this northern part of the state. Adams County and down south, they were okay. This year, they're getting hit, and they're worried as well, down there where most of our tree fruit is produced. It's kind of early to tell, but we do know that there is some damage on apricots. They're probably gone. But then we don't have a whole lot of apricots. But then you get cherries, there's probably some damage. Peaches, I think there's damages down in the southeastern part of the state, a little bit maybe the south central part where a lot of our fruit are grown. But again, it depends. Like we said, we had this cool spell from the 1st of April up till Sunday. It's been pretty cool. So we'll see, yeah. We still may have some apples around.
While the early April cold snap we have just undergone was in no way good news for fruit farmers, it was well forecasted over a week in advance. So is there anything that can be done in anticipation?
It depends somewhat on the type of frost you have. When you have an advective frost, that's one of those things where just get a cold front come down from Canada, and there's just no difference in height as far as temperature. When we have a radiation frost, which is typical on a cool, calm night, and what will happen is you get an inversion where you have warm air above the cold air. And in that cases, there's a lot of things you can do. We have a system overhead irrigation during a frost event, and what we do is we continuously apply water. It forms ice, maintains the plant at 32 degrees.
So at the expense of the weather, you may not be able to take a bite out of your favorite hand-picked fruit this summer, as Mother Nature took a big bite out of spring. I'm Ben Reppert.